Hello and welcome to The Game, football podcast from The Times. Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur, two huge football clubs, two dismal defeats this weekend to compound two shocking seasons. But who is having the tougher time and who has the bigger job to turn their fortunes around? On today's show, we'll also discuss Chelsea, Nottingham Forest, Arsenal, and make some predictions for the Champions League quarter-finals. I'm Tom Clark, and joining me today we have the senior sports writer and Sunday Times columnist Alison Rudd. The football reporter who covers clubs including Chelsea and Fulham is Pete Rutzler, and the former footballer turned journalist Gregor Robson is here as usual. Team, you're going to have to tell me what happened in the football. I'm only joking. I was slightly distracted by Rory McIlroy in the golf late last night, so if I end up using golf terminology throughout this, start talking about Justin Rose and how he made me quite nervous, just get me back on track, okay? Because we do have to talk about the football, because before the golf got exciting and brilliant, the football was shocking. Dismal again. Absolutely atrocious. Defending from non-existent. Can you even call it defending, Gregor? What Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United showed yesterday in their games. United losing 4-1, just to remind you listeners, 4-1 against Newcastle. Tottenham losing 4-2 against Wolves. Could you call it defending?
There wasn't much good defending on show, Tom. No, I'll give Tonali's goal was a beauty.
Yeah, we can do the whole bit but in a minute. We have to give credit to blah blah. We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, goalkeepers again. This is like a theme of the season. Not even just with the ball at their feet. He's coming flapping for things. Just look like absolute bag of nerves. But yeah. They're in an awful state, awful state, both of them. And there's been this sort of idea that if either one of them wins the Europa League, that it's kind of will save their season. It'll particularly in Tottenham's case, it'll be like this huge moment for the club. It would just feel like a twist of fate. It would mean nothing. Both of them are in an awful state, and I don't think there's anything that can save.
Well, they could meet in the final, which I think would be hilarious, because it could be 8-8, couldn't it? And then some ridiculous penalty shootout.
Or like the worst 0-0 you've ever seen. That's another serious potentially. That could happen. And then it'll go to penalties, and then none of the keepers will save any penalties, and it'll be the longest penalty shootout ever. I mean, Gregor, as usual, wonderful analysis, but did not answer my question, listeners.
I'm not sure it was wonderful analysis
I'm sure you tried. You saw he tried to sneak that one by.
What do you want from me? How many times have we spoken about this season?
I want to know who is having the tougher time. It was in my intro, Gregor.
United. I feel like a lot of Tottenham's issues are like self-inflicted. I just think that I've said for a while now, and it's like been a bit of a process with me. I really loved Statistical at Celtic, obviously, and for much of the his first season at the club. But I'm just convinced that the way he wants, our football, mate, is not conducive to success in the Premier League. It's not going to work. So and he'll never change his mind about it. So I feel like the writing is on the wall, and the sooner he's put out his misery, the better, to be honest. United. Yeah, you could say a lot of the same things about it being self-inflicted, but they also have an absolutely woeful squad. It's remarkable. Like the improvements they need in defence and in midfield and up front. Like they have Dalot, they have Garnacho, they have Bruno. There's the makings of whatever formation you play. A little bit of creativity in sort of those attacking midfield / forward roles, but everything else is crap.
Yeah. Well, I'll come back to some of that. That was a good analysis. Pete, Alison, would you agree just very quickly, and when we'll get into the detail?
I didn't say goalkeeper too, sorry.
Yeah.
They have two crap goalkeepers.
Manchester United in a worse state than Tottenham, Pete?
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Just because, I don't know, so much of it is also self-inflicted though. When you said self-inflicted, I just think, I say it every time actually we talk about United, the parachute of coaching doesn't fit their bad squad. Andre Onana last week, cause yourself more problems, why don't you? But yeah, I think when you think of the scale of the club and where they're at, I think Spurs are in a position where you can see the change in maybe the coach come the end of the season. I think the way they're playing, the injury stuff is gone. the writing's on the wall a bit for Ange Postecoglou at the moment. So but they're so terrible. When you emailed yesterday being like, yeah, we're gonna look at who's worse. I hadn't seen the Wolves Spurs highlights. Oh my god,
Yeah.
it was awful. Like the degree to which both teams, it's affecting both in terms of confidence and just like these are competent football players.
That's debatable
Well,
at times.
they should be. I mean, they should be, right? The errors that they're making are extraordinary, and the similarities are so stark. Like you've got players clearly thinking too much. We talked about this before the podcast with McGregor. Like trying to adapt to systems that just aren't working. In United's case, it feels more acute because the coach does not fit. And they don't. It doesn't seem like they're going to be in a position to make the changes that you say that United say that they want to do.
Yeah.
It's just like the turnover of those they've got to move on. The ones they've got to bring in. That's a daunting prospect.
Yeah, there's loads of great strands being picked up here. But Alison, I want to get a kind of quorum.
Do you?
Yeah.
Latin.
Good word.
Amazing.
Thanks. I'm so pleased, honestly, because I am so tired. Where I've plucked quorum from, I've absolutely no idea. Look at me now, Dad. Anyway, Alison.
When you want quorum, you're not going to get quorum.
She's coming in, and she's coming for you.
No, because once you've got the manager bringing in the gods. I mean, I was at the Frankfurt game.
Yes,
on
as we
Thursday,
said last week, we said you were coming for Ange again, and you were.
And he's become much less interesting and feisty, and is quiet and fatalistic.
Given up, some might say.
Indeed, but
except with his own fans. Well, I was at Chelsea Spurs, and he's cupping his ear to the away end after Sarr scores because they criticised his substitution. It just feels like he's gone feisty in the wrong way.
Exactly. But he blamed. It was 1-1, which is not a great scoreline to take away from home to what will be a cauldron of an atmosphere.
Yep.
But he blamed the football gods. I mean, at least at Man United, they're blaming inherent issues with spending and the need to pull costs together and have a better philosophy going forward. They're not blaming things that don't actually exist because the football gods do not exist. And if you start resorting to deities interfering with your plans, then I think things are really bad. And what he means when Postecoglou says the football gods, he's actually bringing in, maybe subconsciously or not, the fact that there is this idea that Spurs are cursed, and the minute they start looking like they're putting together, and we did all praise them under Ange at some point.
Oh, we loved him last season. We loved him. We suggested,
for the
Alison,
entertainment,
getting a framed picture of Ange Postecoglou at one point because we loved him so much.
Exactly.
We loved him.
But it's like he has now realised. He clearly went in and thought, oh, it's working. I can do this because I'm a great coach and I can bring style, and the fans want style, and I'm giving it to them, and they love me, and that'll be conveyed to the players. They will play with confidence, and as soon as something sort of slides a bit out of control, there is no stopping it at Spurs. It feels like a cursed club. And if you're the coach and you buy into that, if you buy into the fact there are powers at work beyond your control, I would say that puts you in a worse position even than Man United.
But is that not Ange Postecoglou who's in a worse position, though? Because I think as a club...
Every manager's done it.
Yeah, but I think as a club, though, and it kind of links to something Pete said about Ruben Amorim and where Manchester United are, and Gregor saying the squad is crap, which I agree with. In terms of the club and where they are, Tottenham feel like they're a managerial change away from the little uptick, and whoever they bring in, they'll be put in a picture frame by us next season, and we'll go, oh, we love him, don't we? Brilliant.
Really?
Oh, what he's done with Brendan Johnson.
What evidence do you have for that? Because each time a manager's come in, we thought, this could be the one that makes Tottenham win something,
I
and
think
they
their
don't.
squad is better than Manchester United's as well.
It is.
By a long way.
Which therefore means they're in a worse position because they're doing so badly in the league,
I think
and they can't pull it together. That means there's something...
Look, there are clearly bigger. We're talking about bigger sort of inherent issues.
That's what we do, Gregor. That's what we do on this podcast.
Tottenham. But you look at their team and you think if you made a couple of defensive signings and didn't ask them to run themselves into the ground every single week and play what is often stupid football, there's the nucleus of a squad that could be far more competitive at the probably compete for Champions League football, and has got a bit of development in it as well. They've made some good young signings. United have none of that. They're like plucking players out of the academy that you're not sure about, and it's going to take a while before you know. And they're playing in a struggling team. We Pete and I were talking before, and I watched Forest Everton at the weekend, and Everton, it's remarkable what David Moyes has done, in that it seems really simple. They've got a great structure, and every player is playing football as they would like to play it. It's like the defenders being asked to defend. The midfielders, like, they can join in attack. When they win the ball, they've been given more license than they had under Sean Dyche to get forward and join in. But fundamentally, they're both playing, like it was Garner and Gay. They're both playing sitting in front of the back four, but they have a bit of license. And like, it's quite simplistic. But you look at Man United, none of the players look comfortable in the system. Mm-hmm. And you look at Tottenham, and the sort of evolution of the team means that particularly the defenders, I think, don't look comfortable playing this absolute, I call it suicidal football, because they're just shooting themselves in the foot all the time. Yeah. I was reading, they've got an expected goals. The bottom three have conceded more chances than Spurs. That's ridiculous. He's talking about luck and the gods. That's not luck. That's over the course of the season. Yeah, they give up chances that mean they should be battling relegation. Yeah, well, if they weren't,
Well, that's another thing, isn't it? It's a bit of a travesty that neither of them are in danger this year. Like, I know you guys talked about the league last week, but
they should be looking over their shoulders.
They should be looking over their shoulders. They should be sweating on it, and it should have made it a little bit interesting. Yeah, but I mean, we can talk a little bit more about the, obviously with Bournemouth's news regarding their PSR and how they managed to avoid the losses, and you just look at that bottom three and think, how are teams going to stay up in the league? How are they going to be competitive? Yeah. Even in a scenario where United and Spurs are dropping off so much that there's no jeopardy.
Yeah. It's a bit from Bill's column. I know we've spoken a lot about this, but very quickly, the 14-point gap now between, 17th and 18th, is twice as big as it has been at any point since 3 points for a win. Yeah. It's like,
speaking of those teams at the bottom, just some stats that are linked to both Tottenham and Manchester United. Only the current three bottom clubs, Southampton, Leicester and Ipswich, have lost more Premier League games than Tottenham this season, while it's the most defeats Tottenham have suffered in a league campaign since 2003-04, when they finished 14th. Manchester United's 14 league defeats this season is their joint highest tally in a single Premier League campaign, when they lost 14 games last season. Since Ruben Amorim's first game in charge, only Southampton, Tottenham and Leicester have conceded more goals in all competitions than Manchester United. Manchester United have gone 1-0 down in 19 Premier League games this season, with only Leicester, Southampton and Wolves doing so more often. Only Southampton and Aston Villa have made more errors leading to goals in the Premier League this season than Manchester United.
What is left? But what is left for Spurs to do? Because they bring in a manager who gives them the flair and expansive football that led to the booing for previous pragmatic coaches who had a track record of silverware. So are they going to go back down that route?
There's a middle ground.
Well, what is the middle ground?
I don't know who it is, but there is.
Because you mentioned Tottenham fans, and we ran a piece on the website, and I've mentioned people like Glenn, my colleague on the editing floor, who were backing Ange for a long time, and I think a lot of fans were. But it feels that the last few weeks, and Pete may be part of it, is this strange hostility that he seems to have taken and turned it away from journalists and our mate Tom Allnut, and turned it on his own fans. I don't know. It seems completely bizarre. But it feels to me, do we all agree? It feels like the end of the road for Ange, doesn't it? Even if he wins the Europa League.
It was a brave appointment, and I still wouldn't criticise Daniel Levy for making it, and it was fun for a long time, but the guy's not going to change. And as I say, I'm convinced that even if they were allowed to spend like 500 million quid on some of the best players in Europe, if he asked them to play like this, they wouldn't win the league.
Fundamentally, he's got to turn the mood around within outside mood is slightly different. That can come from results, but what it looks like is within the team itself. And we started this by talking about how shambolic they were against Wolves, and mistakes they were making from players they're not that bad. No. But you've got to ask then, is Ange Postecoglou the guy who's going to reinstill that confidence, get those players playing for him in what is a complicated and complex tactical demands that he's offering? And as Gregor says, compared to, say, Everton, it's boiling it down, it's simplistic, and you've got all these instructions. you've got so much pressure, you're not playing well, confidence is low, you're just going to keep making mistakes. And so at some point, you have to break that cycle. And at the moment, the only way I think that can happen is if the coach changes, really.
Alison,
it's ridiculous. I mean, it's like he thinks he's got Mickey van der Ven, so everything will be all right for the key games. So he rests him, brings him back for a little bit, rests him, just in case. Because, I mean, that's not how you build a team, thinking you've got one good defender. They don't practice set pieces.
I just wanted to come back to do you not think that they're a managerial change away from that kind of classic uptick?
No, because we've been here before. They're always one managerial change away. They've always. I mean, they were a team with Harry Kane in it not so very long ago, and they couldn't win anything. And all they needed, in theory, was a manager who knew how to win trophies. That doesn't work. So you bring in a manager who claims to always win a trophy in his second season, but buys into the Spurs idea of expansive football and flair. We don't want to win pragmatically, we want to win in a fun way. That doesn't work. So where do you go next? Where do you go next?
They could face a sort of Erik ten Hag moment, though. If they win the Europa League, they qualify for the Champions League, gets rid of the burden of not winning a trophy. That's a massive mood changer.
Do we think they're going to?
I don't, but it's. I can't see them getting past Frankfurt next week. But if they do get past Frankfurt, then I mean that's
you can't
really
see it
is.
right now, but
It's
totally possible.
Yeah.
Do you think?
I don't think that should really change the conversation.
No, but that's what I mean.
I know
but
it would.
I almost think your point about the Erik ten Hag moment will be a moment remembered by modern football clubs and the people who run them, won't they? That they'll sit in their boardrooms having their own podcast going, yeah, but he's won a trophy. Remember Erik ten Hag? Remember ten Hag?
I think you're giving them too much credit. I think that silverware does silly things to
So you think if Andrew wins the Europa League, he stays?
Oh, undoubtedly.
He'll be sacked the day before the Europa League final.
No, he'll stay because Spurs obviously, this is a big thing. It's a big monkey to get off their back.
Yeah.
But silverware does. I don't think it should change anything. I remember Erik ten Hag when they won the League Cup. First of all, people were talking about this is going to be the start of a dynasty, and it was like, what? Have you seen the rest of this? This is not. There's no dynasty beginning here. And then when they won the FA Cup, again, it's like he deserves the chance under this new ownership, this new era to build something. Okay, how did that work out?
I think Spurs is different just because of how long they've waited for a trophy, and that is the big monkey on the back, right? So, and that I was mentioned about a mood change. You think, I could only see the only way is the coach change. Winning the Europa League, that is a mood changer. Can that change the perception of the squad? Will it change how the team play if there are structural tactical flaws? No, but that might be a difference maker. So
could we see Manchester United winning the Europa League? Which of them have got the better chance?
United. I was going to say United.
That is
which goes against them.
Come on, come on.
United, if it is, and I mean, this is the best they can hope for. Clearly, it is a United Spurs final, which isn't impossible, and it would be quite funny.
I'm trying to think of something stupid I could bet you that if it's a United Spurs final, but I almost don't want to because I kind of want it to happen as well. But, anyway, sorry, carry on.
But then it becomes it's a huge event. Which club, which group of fans, which entity can tap into something to know how to do that, and that's Man United. I mean, I can picture Spurs being far more nervy about the whole thing because it would be too enormous for them. Whereas United are, despite their structural issues, they have consistently won the trophies through their worst period. They're still winning trophies.
Yeah.
They know how to do that.
Coming back to a question I asked, or I didn't actually ask it, I just said it and Gregor agreed with me. Have Tottenham got the better squad, got the better players? Because it's going to lead me on to my next point, the second part of this, which is who's got more work to do to put them back where they want to be. Tottenham have the better squad, right?
Yeah, but there's also like a sort of degree to where United want to be. And not that Spurs don't want to be winning the Premier League, but they haven't set that as a target.
Yeah.
So,
but Tottenham have got better players, right?
Yeah.
Alison?
No, they are. If you just list them.
Yeah, just listing them.
Just listing them on a piece of paper, not in formation.
The idea that their seasons were so bad that both clubs went, do you know what, we can't be bothered anymore. And all their players were up for grabs. Tottenham players.
Yeah, but if you made a list of the players at Bournemouth, for example, you would
we
say.
love Bournemouth.
Yes, I know, but the point is, it's not just about the list of players. It's about what you do with them. And I don't actually think individually there are that many bad players for United. I thought Zertsky looked great for the first half against Newcastle, for example. But I could see promise in him. I could see someone signing him and making him really, really useful in the Premier League. It's just where these two clubs are now. They're not in a place to extract the innate talent from the players they've got.
Yeah, and I think the coach comes into it as well. Like the misfit at United means that the players that they have look worse because they're not. You've
mentioned this a couple of times, and I'm interested in it as a theory because obviously Jim Ratcliffe has talked about Ruben's our man, we love him, he's not perfect, but we love him, and they have, because of Erik ten Hag and because of everything else, they kind of have to keep going with this now, don't they, as a PR exercise. But you've mentioned it a couple of times, Pete, about it being a bad fit. Do we see it improving? Gregor, you briefly mentioned on the Manchester derby that it looked defensively like they were better. Hamza agreed. Does it look like it's... Because it didn't look like it's working yesterday.
Well, maybe let's see what a pre-season can do. But you would say not without the changes to the squad. Not without players that know how to play the system.
But shouldn't we be seeing some semblance of it by now? I mean, he's been. I know, you're right about pre-season, of course, and people talk about the full weeks and quick games, turnarounds and stuff. But he's been there a good amount of time now. Yeah, but if he is as good a coach as we all believe he is,
you have to consider the context, the mood of United when he comes in. Yes, there's the optimism about him coming in, but it's at a low ebb. There's a criticism of Erik ten Hag and the decision making behind that. There's criticism of players that were bought in the summer very recently. There's the Dan Ashworth stuff as well. Like in terms of an environment, it's not very easy to change all of this mid-season. So you do say, well, maybe in the summer, and you can sit down and then suddenly have conversations with players like, you're not going to be involved, you're going to be doing this, and maybe you have a clearer approach to the coming season. But it's just whether they can mould the squad. That's the issue. I think the criticism, I've always said, the appointment of Ruben Amorim mid-season does not make sense with that squad. I mean, hindsight's great, but so you just have to suck up this. You just have to suck up how it looks and how bad it is, and then wait to the summer and then try and address it. But if you can't address these issues, then the whole thing is flawed, because then you can't get the best out of a coach you've appointed to play a very specific way. He's not played any other way as a coach. Like the idea that it's just going to suddenly work with players that aren't used to this system without players that he wants playing in that system, it just is for the birds. So.
See, that is slightly laughable, isn't it? It's like, you want a wedding dress, so you go to a seamstress, and she says, well, I only do trouser suits. And you're going, yeah, but I want a dress. Yeah, but I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
No,
I know I'm
that's
really
a fair
well
criticism.
paid, and I'm very famous, but I only do trouser suits.
Yeah, that's a fair criticism. It is. It's a fair criticism. And if Amorim wants to turn this around, he may have to adapt, but I just don't think he's going to do that.
I really want to get into Alison's remorse about what she wore on her wedding day, but I'm going to park that for now. Gregor, Pete made some excellent points and looks forward to the summer. Whenever we get to the end of this endless season, football never ever stops, does it? The season never ends. The pre-seasons and the post-seasons blur. At the end, which club has more work to do? I mean, I think it's Manchester United. I've already kind of made that hint about change. I think Tottenham, change a manager.
Yes, but they can change real things. Tottenham have to change ethereal
psychological things. Sorry, Gregor.
No, it's Man United. He's got his hands tied behind his back as well because of, financial fair play rules. He's already admitted it's going to be hard for them to enact the overhaul that everyone knows they need. So it's a bit of a kind of death spiral, I think. They
can't really sack him because that looks awful and it's very expensive. It makes things even harder. It's just...
No, I completely agree. They cannot sack him. Yeah. I think they'd have to. They could even get into the relegation zone. And if at some point next season, they still couldn't really sack him.
Do you think? That's an interesting.
Where the hell do you go after this?
That's very interesting. Because
thank you so much.
The United fans are singing his name. Yes, and they like him. They like him. They like him a lot.
That was
they
remarkable.
Like him a lot. If they were booing him, would they sack him?
That's true. But I think there'll be a long time before Manchester United fans, and we talk about particularly their away support, as we saw at Newcastle, up in the gods, watching their team lose 4-1, as you said, singing for 10 minutes. That's when I think it turns with Manchester United away fans, particularly, are the ones who are some of the most loyal. But I think it's a long time before Manchester United fans turn on Ruben Amorim. A long time.
I agree. Just more broadly, I have reservations about whether this formation, like his system, is really a system that's going to bring success in the Premier League as well.
I think that's I think that's
clearly he knows more than me. But apart from Crystal Palace, who else really plays like this now in the Premier League? And Crystal Palace are like trying to be a disruptor. Man United are supposed to be Man United, and
it's been a while since we've had one of those. Man United are Man United.
They're supposed to be Man United. They're not Man United. So, I remain to be convinced about that. And he's got a lot of convincing to do about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, let's face it. Let's say it how it is. A top coach would have a preferred system and one that's worked for him abroad, but he would be clever enough to be able to surprise the opposition by sometimes going to 4 at the back, playing a different system because it suits the game ahead of him, and then switching back to 3 at the back when he feels the game is right. But to just plough on regardless, it's just such I don't know. I don't think that's a top coach.
We've said this before too, yeah. I think increasingly dogmatists are not going to be successful either. I think that football is because the sort of football has become more cerebral, and the quality of coaching in the Premier League generally has risen so much that other teams are flexible. Other teams, if you know what's coming at you, it's easier to prepare for. A lot of teams mix up their play. They mix up whether they're in a low block, whether they're pressing high. They can do lots of different things in a game or across a season. And so to be so devoted to one way, it's the same. We've said this about Spurs too. Is not for me anymore.
But you mentioned Palace. Oliver Glasner has stuck with 3 at the back because it's worked. It has worked for him. But when he was at Frankfurt, he would mix it up when he needed to. He could switch to 4 at the back. He played various formations with Frankfurt, and he can do that. And if it started to go wrong for him, you feel because of his coaching background, he would make those adaptations. I think it's rather, I don't know, slightly foolish to keep proclaiming I only do one thing. I don't think it works.
Just one other stat that I saw on social media, which means it might not be true, but it's so remarkable I'm going to read it anyway. Manchester United under Sir Alex Ferguson in 26 years, 114 Premier League games lost. Manchester United since Alex Ferguson retired, 12 years, 115 Premier League games lost. I think they're a long way off where they want to be. Gregor, I just wanted to finish about something, goalkeepers. Because so many things going around, and I think it's something that, with the nature of when we do our pods, we sometimes miss out on Europa League, and that is one of the remarkable stories of Manchester United's remarkably terrible season. Is Andrea Onana calling it on and then throwing 2 in the net, and then getting rested, dropped for the game against.
He wasn't even there, was he?
Newcastle. I mean,
he wasn't.
Was he? No. It's not.
And also linking in Tottenham, Vicario flapping all over the place. I mentioned him earlier, Glenn, who was in the office yesterday, a Tottenham fan, going, "What are you doing? Catch it! What are you doing?" We're in a bad state with some goalkeepers at the minute.
Yeah, what do you want me to say? I mean,
I want you to give them a booting. As a former defender, I want you to absolutely lay the smack down on the goalkeeper.
There's the broader theme of, or demand, of, goalkeepers playing with the ball at their feet and not being cut out for it. Asking a goalkeeper who's not cut out to do that, to do it. And, we saw that from Bayern, and we've seen it from Vicario. But Vicario, they also look a bit kind of lightweight, these two guys, I think. And Vicario just sort of exuded panic in this game. He's the one when he palmed it into Spence. It's you got to know your defenders there. And it's maybe being a little bit overcritical, but I feel like you could have palmed that to the side. Look, goalkeeping is in a bad place. We've seen it. I think Hamza did a piece a few weeks back about how many errors per game there are across the season. You'll know a lot about this from watching Chelsea with Sanchez, and in fact, he spoke about how he helped make the atmosphere really tricky this weekend. Mm-hmm. He often does.
Yeah.
So it's quite a common thing. But then you get coaches like Maresca saying, when you kick it long, that's the moment you've got to stay brave.
Yeah.
And so it's not their fault. It's not all their fault. They're asked to do something that they're not entirely comfortable with.
How do you we're going to come on to Chelsea in the second half of the show. What does Amorim do on Thursday? Does he play Onana or does he play Bayern? Seriously, that's just the final. I've asked you a lot of either or questions so far in this first segment. That's the final one. Do you bring Onana back and go, you're my man, make some great saves?
He's not. No, you can't do that because he's not going to believe you. I mean, you've just.
So do you play Bayern Deer, who's
yes,
also?
You do. You do.
You play
No,
Bayern
Tom
Deer.
Heaton, bring him in.
I mean, honestly,
Goalkeepers are allowed one mistake.
Bayern Deer. I think you bring Onana back.
I do too. I think probably they've had a conversation.
I think you bring Onana back.
I'm going to take you at the firing line.
You go for the rom-com story.
Line. I'll put you back in and you better perform.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens coming up later this week for Manchester United. A fascinating first half of the show and loads to talk about in the second half, including Chelsea, as I just mentioned. But it's time for a break, so it's time for the quiz question. Who am I talking about when I say a former footballer who played as a goalkeeper? See what I did there? For many clubs, including Manchester United, Watford, Birmingham and West Brom. Find out after the break. Welcome back to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. I'm Tom Clark and I've got Pete Rutzler, Gregor Robson and Alison Rudd with me. Pete, also, I need to go back. I mean, I haven't got the time for this. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to make it up. But in terms of quiz questions right, and you can't say that you're on every show.
Yeah. Okay, we'll do per night.
Per game.
Yeah, per game.
Per game.
I'd say, Pete, you're up there, and you got it straight away this week. The answer was Ben Foster. Nice and easy. And Pete, we're going to come straight back to you as a reward and ask you about Chelsea. Gregor touched on some of the themes that we're going to talk about. You were there to watch them draw 2-2 with Ipswich. I mean, what's going on? We've talked a lot about managers in the first half of the show, and it kind of feels like we're starting to talk increasingly about Enzo Maresca and his position as Chelsea head coach.
Yes. A very damaging draw at home to Ipswich, who obviously beat them in December, so they've plundered 4 points off Chelsea.
Great use of plundered. Loved it.
Really, it was quite a strange game, but it was really emblematic of kind of where Chelsea have sort of gone. They started the game well, like not amazing, but comfortably better. Ipswich giving up way too much space. They looked like they were getting overrun in the middle. Chelsea were nice and fluent. Nicholas Jackson should score, obviously doesn't score because he hasn't scored for a long time now. Hits the post after a cutback. And then on 20 minutes, Ipswich score against the run of play. They go long. The defending is terrible. And that's one of the funny things because Chelsea recently, criticism of style of play, their attacking flow has sort of gone, but defensively they've tightened up.
Right.
There've been, I think it's 4 clean sheets in the last 5 or something like that, which obviously doesn't mask how not entertaining they have been. Yeah. But the defending here was terrible, and it flicked a switch inside Stamford Bridge, and it feels like that's been growing. And this was sort of a louder version of the just general sense of unease and uncertainty that I think relates to one style of play, which we sort of touched upon a bit already in previous pods, but also the direction of the club. Are they going on the right way? The recruitment, because of how much they've spent, again, direction. And then whether the manager is good enough. And it just manifested itself in this just tension and anger off the terraces. And the players just couldn't deal with it. They could not handle it. There were bad decisions, poor passes. And this then directly manifested itself in the scenario that led to the second goal. Robert Sanchez, as Gregor mentioned in the first half, had been making mistakes. Playing out from the back, giving the ball away. I think it was only 2, but again, that's a lot. And considering that he's doing it all the time, that affects what supporters are feeling. Chelsea looked like they were going to play out from the back short. Fans aren't happy with this. The tension is too much. The noise coming down from the Matthew Harding stand was the loudest I've heard it for a goal kick.
What is it? Is it like, get rid of it, knock it? Like what is?
It's just like, no. It's just like, just don't do that. Just get it long, get it forward. It's this like urge, get it forward. This is bad. We need to attack. Attack is a chant that's been heard frequently now among the Chelsea fan base. There's a little discussion. Sanchez goes, right, we're going to go long. Goes long. Chelsea nowhere near the first ball, nowhere near the second ball. Ipswich counter. Jack Clark and Ciso crossed the back post, 2-0. And then Chelsea did not regain their composure until half-time. And credit to Chelsea, they come back in the second half. But the 2-goal advantage is too much to bridge. And then you get after the game, Maresca, and I just described what happened.
Yeah.
He said, look, the confidence went after, because of the environment. He tried to sort of row back on it, being like, there's not an issue with the fans, but it's not the first time he's spoken about this.
I wanted to ask you about that because, as ever, you guys are at the matches, you bring in, we speak about, what should we do? This is what he said. And then quite often I'll be in the office and maybe speak to some of the sub-editors who are thinking about what headlines to put on it. And the person who was sub-editing your match report was like, is he going for the fans here because of that use of environment? But was your interpretation that that was what he was talking about, the fans specifically?
Yes, I think he was, but he didn't want to say that because he's not... Like, Chelsea coaches in the past have criticised fans. Jose Mourinho's done anything. Antonio Conte's done it. But Enzo Maresca doesn't have the credit in the bank to be doing that. And certainly not when the team's form has been 5 wins from the last 16. And the football that the fans are watching has not been entertaining consistently. Yes, they've won. I think they've won 5 in a row at home. But of those games, Southampton doesn't really count. They weren't really good. They weren't good against Leicester. It took a shot from the edge of the box from Cucurella to break the deadlock. Didn't have a shot in the first half against Copenhagen at home. That has just... The fans are not convinced at the moment that Maresca is playing, that the style of play is going to work. As I said before, it's one part of, I think, a broader picture. But this is the lightning rod. This is the key thing at the moment. And it's not helped by the fact that they were so good at the start of the season that there's almost a revisionism of it being like, actually, this was Pochettino football. Because Pochettino ended last season very well.
Yeah.
And so the start of the season has nothing to do with Maresca, and then...
Well, they didn't like his style either. Does anyone like any style of football?
But that's
the question we should just pose now.
Yeah,
I've
that's
just criticised
exactly
every manager so far.
No, I know. But that's the conclusion I sort of wanted to get to.
What's the optimum style?
Should we just end the podcast there? Actually,
Does anyone like football?
we all hate football. Oh my God. No, PSG. I like PSG.
Yeah, they're really
we
good.
love PSG.
Yeah.
Should we do a French football podcast? Is that what we're getting to? We all hate football. There you go. There's your title, Neil. That'll bring
I
the
think when
listeners in.
Maresca says the environment, he's worried about the coffee houses on the King's Road because they're not as good as they were.
We've gone really off piece. Sorry, Pete.
No. But I think
No,
you make a funny point, Greg, because I was thinking as well. As Pete's talking, you've also got Chelsea, also in a European competition that takes place on Thursday nights. Also could win it, probably should win it, probably might win it, almost certainly will win it.
Have to win it.
Also might make no difference whatsoever to how their fans perceive their season and what the future of the manager might be. Am I over the top there, Pete, or is that about fair?
In terms of supporters, yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think internally, it's always been said to me that this is sort of like a 2-season season because of the Club World Cup. There's not really the time to change.
Yeah. It's obviously just one giant season.
Yeah, but that could always change. This is Chelsea, right? So,
but how would you? Because you've watched a lot of them live, and I find on TV it's sometimes harder to work out what he's trying to achieve. But how would you sum up what his style, Maresca's style is? Because it is a bit different from everybody else. It seems to me he relies on his defence enormously, but they're not quite good enough, and he leaves these huge gaps between defence and midfield. So what's supposed to happen in that no man's land in between? What does he want? Does he want a fullback to fill that position? I don't understand what you'd call that.
He has a very clear positional style of play, very dogmatic about it. He's certainly he's a Pep Guardiola disciple in that sense. In terms of his fullbacks, he inverts them, and he does do different things in how he moves players around. But the same structure is there. It's a 3-2-5, like most managers play. Sometimes they'll end up with a 3-2-6 in possession. What he wants to do is control games with the ball, use the ball to suffocate an opponent. And when you face teams that sit very deep, and this is where Chelsea have really begun to struggle, you have to move the ball quickly. You have to do it at a tempo in order to just create space, because there isn't that space. And the other key point is you do need to have a very high level of defenders, 1v1 defenders, to cope with the turnovers that are inevitably going to happen because of the bodies you're committing forward. He's spoken about, with Wesley Fofana. Wesley Fofana's injured again. I just asked him this in a press conference, whether you can actually rely on him going forward. But he was the one who said he's a unique player which feels quite remarkable considering how many players they brought in, to play defensively one-on-one, who he can trust with going one-on-one against a Solanke or a Watkins or whoever, and others can move forward.
So is that not the same thing as what Greg has often said about Ange, though?
But that's
you feel like you lose Romero and Van der Ven and it all falls apart. You're kind of hanging it on these guys that they're one injury away from your entire thing falling apart.
Yeah.
And also Spurs don't have like a Caicedo.
Yeah.
You know, there are certain positions, and that's always been the case. There are certain positions that are really important in any system. But it's interesting, if you think about it, like Liverpool, some fans, Alison, think it's like boring, even though they're winning. Chelsea fans, like, they think, you know, you're knocking the ball around without doing a lot. That's part of their criticism, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Very much so.
Spurs, we know the problems. Man United are wedded to a system that people think will never work and doesn't fit the team. Like, a lot of big clubs are wrestling with...
I'll bring it back to last week's topic. This season's crap and everyone's crap.
No,
and
but
none of you believe me.
A lot of the big teams are wrestling with, like, you know, how they should play. What do your fans really want from it? Obviously, the number one thing is to win. If Chelsea could maintain that run that they were on, you know, before Christmas or whenever it was, there wouldn't be any of these grumbles. That's the big thing. But you know, you look down the league, and it's mainly the teams who are like disrupting, like a Bournemouth or anyone, or even a Forest. The Forest play a style of play that really lets the other team hog the ball, but they're winning, so everyone's happy.
I'll come on to Forest in just a second. Pete, just one final question, because you kind of touched on it in your excellent kind of summary. One of the things we loved about Endo Maresca's Chelsea at the start of the season was their attacking. They were scoring loads of goals. We thought, you know, they're going to be in the title race, etc. I was trying, you know, you can't watch all the games at the same time, but I watched some of the first half, and there were quite a lot of moments where they would get the ball off Ipswich, and Ipswich would give them quite a lot of space, and you'd have Cole Palmer turning into space, running into, and you've got Neto one side, but it looked so confused. It didn't look like Cole Palmer, the great Cole Palmer, was going, right, I'm going to fizz it in here, then get in the box. Has the attacking got confused because there's so many players, too many options, too much rotation? What, or is it lack of confidence? What do you think that is that I was watching yesterday?
It's less the squad part, because it's got smaller since January. But I think there's more to do with, well, you just mentioned Palmer. Palmer's in a massive funk at the moment, and that's kind of reflective of the whole of the attack. To be honest, there are players who have lost that sort of intuitive play without thinking, overthinking things. A little bit of lack of confidence. Jackson's just come back in. They've looked a bit better with him in the team. My issue with it is that it's almost like that slight hesitation, that slight overthinking, which you get in these.
That's what I thought I was seeing. You weren't going, right, I'm going to play it there. It was like the look. Do I go left? Do I go right? Where's the runner?
But that's so damaging when you're playing a team that's playing with 11 players, 11 men behind the ball. Because you need... What Maresca's team did so well in the first half of the season was they'd get the ball to their wide players very quickly. They would have more space to challenge a fullback one-on-one, and they're very good. Sancho's very good one-on-one. Noni Madueke is probably Chelsea's most effective winger, I would say. He's been in and out with injury. Pedro Neto's very good one-on-one. But if you give them the ball and you haven't moved it to them quickly enough, they're doubled up. They're already on the edge of the penalty area. There is no space. And then you do get this horseshoe football, which is side to side to side to side to side. And you can't break it down, and that's what they've really struggled with. And they're trying. It's when you couple that with confidence, you're not making right decisions. You're not taking risks. Cole Palmer's not taking the risks he was before. He's not trying audacious shots from distance. He's not forcing initiative, forcing efforts that might deflect off someone and drop kindly. So Chelsea don't get the opening goal. The game doesn't really open up a bit, and then they end up losing or dropping points.
So if you were being held over a cliff by, you know, your ankle, and you had to say what was
feels a bit mean, but anyway.
What was the moment when it switched? Because it was working.
Yeah, when they conceded. It was a goal.
Not in that game.
In the season.
In the season. What is the thing? Is it Cole Palmer in his funk, as you put it, and the rest of his players knowing that, oh, Cole Palmer's not playing very well, I don't know what to do now? Or
See if you
it
can answer
something...
this in 30 seconds, by the way, because we've still got to get Forest and Arsenal in after.
When was the switch flicked on the season?
It was probably when they lost Romeo Lavia and Wesley Fofana to injury at the same time, which was at the beginning of December.
That is excellent. That was 10 seconds. That was 5 seconds. That was fantastic, Pete. You can come again.
Both of them were consistent parts of the team, and they just started to drop points, and then it sort of spiraled from there, really.
Final question, which you're only allowed to answer in one word. Will they win the Conference League?
Oh yeah, absolutely, they should.
That was more than one word.
Sorry.
Yes, no, that's fine.
I mean, if they don't, their squad's worth as much as the entire competition put together. Like they have to win that.
Absolutely excellent
And standard of
analysis
football
on
I'm watching at the moment in that competition means that they definitely should.
They absolutely should. No excuses, Chelsea. You have to win this competition. Gregor, we've talked about how crap this season is, how crap all the teams are. Football's crap. We all hate it. One set of fans that are having a nice time, Nottingham Forest.
Well, they were.
They were. They were. This is what I mean. We need Forest. Come on, don't let us down now. Don't let us down now, Gregor. I've mentioned this before. We've got a regular listener, James, who's been saying for a long time he doesn't believe in Forest. And he starts getting... After this match, he got in touch with me and said, they're not going to do it. They're not going to get it over the line. Squeaky bum time.
It's definitely squeaky bum time. This is the first time you looked at them and thought that the pressure is beginning to tell on everyone. Like it was like a weird end of season dead rubber vibe. There was that, there's just like that murmur in the crowd. It started with all the usual raucous city ground vibes, but then it was like, oh, this is nervous. Oh, why has he just slipped on the ball? Why is he misplacing pass? Why is this so shambolic? And then it's like, oh my God, and they're getting really nervous. And it was like that kind of vibe between the players and the crowd. And Everton, meanwhile, were like just super organised, had more of a threat. Had better, Ndai and Harrison were causing problems out wide, and as the game wore on, and Forest the game probably only became open in the last 15 minutes. Still, Forest didn't really create anything, but Everton started to get better chances in the break, and obviously the goal at the end was from Forest's point of view cataclysmic, just a ball, a miscontrol by Mario just inside. From Forest corner, just inside their Everton's half.
So, squeaky bum time for Nottingham Forest fans. Can we reassure them, team? Are they going to get the Champions League?
Absolutely.
Alison? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, I think so. Gregor?
Just.
Oh, God, they might be a little bit worried. Even Gregor Robertson's starting to turn. Anyway, we move to Arsenal. A final word on Arsenal and the Champions League. Alison, you were there. Brentford, the match that meant nothing. Or did it mean everything? Is there anything we can learn from this 1-1 draw? What would Carlo Ancelotti have been watching and thinking there's hope?
I think he would have been thinking there's hope because they showed how much it meant. It meant too much. The whole blooming day was like a celebration of the 3-0 win in the quarterfinal.
Are you going to start making DVD digs and things now?
No, but it was like that. There was a big cheer when Declan Rice's name was called out.
As there should be. He scored 2 free kicks against Real Madrid.
He was given the whole, Messiah treatment when he took a corner.
As he should. He scored 2 free kicks against Real Madrid.
And the atmosphere was fantastic at the start, as everyone remembered. But people were slow to come back from their half-time drinks because they were talking about the 3-0 and they weren't concentrating.
As they should, because they beat Real Madrid 3-0.
They were not concentrating on the game against Brentford. And Brentford took advantage of that and got a very worthy, well-deserved draw out of the game. And they scored when Arteta had brought on the 5 players he was resting for the second leg.
Right.
So you cannot say, oh, Brentford only scored against a weakened Arsenal. They did not. They scored against a full-strength Arsenal. And the fact they were so distracted as an entity, Arteta said the players were not distracted by what is coming on Wednesday night, but I think everybody was. That feeds into the sense that if Real Madrid can get an early goal, there will be wobbles and Madrid will definitely think they can overturn it.
And can they?
Yes.
Madrid can?
Yes.
Will they?
I asked Thomas Frank about this. Well, it's a bit mean because it's not his team. But he said there are 2 places that you can go to 3-0 up and lose, and they are Anfield and the Bernabeu. And I trust Thomas Frank.
Oh, crikey. Is it because he mentioned Anfield, though? That might be a big part. I think that's exactly what we stumbled across there.
That is fact.
So I don't know whether... But will they? Because I'm going to do predictions. We're going to finish with a prediction. Arsenal or Real Madrid to progress?
Real Madrid. 15 times winners, Real Madrid.
Ooh. Pete?
No, I think Arsenal will do it.
Gregor?
Arsenal.
I'm going to go Arsenal as well. And finally, anyone got any hopes for Aston Villa against PSG?
No.
I think they'll play well, but it won't be enough.
Gregor?
I agree, yeah. I think it'll be another kind of fairly tight game, but PSG will score. It's going to be hard for them to score, for Villa to score enough goals to get through, or even take it into extra time, so I think probably PSG.
Marcus Rashford off the bench against PSG again. You heard it here first, ending with a stupid bit of analysis from me after lots of brilliant analysis from Pete Rutzler, Alison Rudd and Gregor Robertson. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you too for listening. Keep your ears peeled. We're going to be bringing an EFL show to you in a couple of days' time and the regular show on Thursday too. Don't know if you can keep your ears peeled, but do it anyway. See you soon. Bye.